He was better, her mom sneered. I smiled, then let her go back to him, and walked out. A few days later, I found out what they had both been doing behind my back and filed a police report. Now my fiancé is begging for another chance. Sup, Reddit. I'm a patient guy. 6 months of patience, to be exact. Then I ran out. Name's Lucas, 31 male. I proposed to Presley on a Tuesday night. Got down on one knee. She cried. Said yes. For about 48 hours, I thought my life was actually heading somewhere good. Then we told her mother. Quick background. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, where my dad ran a welding shop and my mom worked dispatch for the county sheriff's office. Blue collar down to the bone. First person in my family to finish college. I worked 2 jobs through school, got my civil engineering degree with honors, while averaging 4 hours of sleep and consuming enough ramen to permanently alter my sodium levels. Now I design bridges and highway systems for a regional firm. Bought my own condo at 28. No debt except my truck payment. Never missed a deadline in 9 years of professional work. The kind of guy who shows up early, stays late, and doesn't complain about either. By most people's standards, a solid guy to marry. Not by Lorraine Whitfield's standards. The engagement announcement happened at her house. She answered the door wearing pearls at 3 in the afternoon on a Saturday. Full strand. Freshly polished. She looked at us, saw the ring on Presley's finger, and her face did this thing where the smile showed up about 3 seconds late. Oh, that's wonderful. The pause before wonderful lasted long enough to file taxes. Then she examined the ring like a pawnbroker, appraising stolen goods. Turned Presley's hand side to side, squinted. Let the silence build until everyone in the room felt uncomfortable. Gavin would have gotten her a princess cut. This is very round, and there it was. First mention of the ghost who'd haunt my entire engagement. Gavin, Presley's ex from 3 years prior. The guy Lorraine apparently kept on standby like some kind of romantic insurance policy. I'd heard about him maybe twice from Presley herself. Ancient history. Didn't work out. They wanted different things. Nothing dramatic. But according to Lorraine, Gavin was Einstein, young Clooney, and whoever invented central heating rolled into one spectacular package of human achievement. My buddy Theo, who I'd known since sophomore year, started calling it the Gavin counter after I vented about the third family dinner. We hit double digits by month 2. The pattern became predictable. We'd visit. Lorraine would take a shot comparing me unfavorably to the ex. I'd absorb it. Presley would apologize in the car on the way home. Rinse and repeat. I told myself it was just one person. Presley's older brother Cole lived across the country and stayed out of family politics. Her grandmother was genuinely lovely. It was just Lorraine. But just Lorraine was exhausting. She criticized my job. Civil engineer, she said once, stretching the words like taffy. That's very practical. She made comments about my condo being small, my truck being blue collar, the fact that I didn't golf. Nothing explosive at first, just constant little digs. The kind that don't seem like much on their own, but pile up over time. I started dreading weekends. Started making excuses to work late on Fridays, so we'd have less time at her house. Started feeling my jaw clench the moment we turned onto her street. My dentist asked if I'd been grinding my teeth. I told him only on weekends. And always, everything circled back to Gavin. The man was basically a religion at this point. Presley and I fought about Lorraine constantly. Not screaming matches. The slow burn kind where you have the same conversation 14 times without ever actually fixing anything. I'd say your mother compared me to your ex again. She'd say, I know, I'm sorry, she's just like that. I'd say, can you talk to her? She'd say, I've tried. She doesn't listen. I'd say, try harder. We'd go to bed frustrated and wake up pretending everything was fine. I'm a patient guy. I once spent 8 months dealing with a contractor who couldn't read blueprints without losing my temper. The man literally installed drainage pipes flowing uphill. I just calmly explained the basic principles of gravity, like I was teaching kindergarten. But patience has limits. Mine was running out faster than I wanted to admit. 3 months into the engagement, things with Lorraine escalated. Like she sensed the wedding getting closer and decided to stop holding back. First, there was the bridal shower she hijacked. Presley's maid of honor, Vanessa, had planned a nice, low-key gathering at a restaurant downtown. Exactly what Presley requested. Small guest list, simple menu, no fuss. Lorraine showed up 45 minutes early with her own centerpieces in the trunk. Custom made. She rearranged the entire seating chart without asking anyone while the waitstaff watched in confusion. Then she stood up during appetizers and announced that the venue was beneath what her daughter deserved, but she supposed they were working with a limited budget. The room went quiet. Vanessa's face turned red. Half the guests stared at their plates. Vanessa later told me she'd never been so disrespected at an event she planned. Presley apologized to her mother for Vanessa's sensitivity. Not to Vanessa, to Lorraine, for Vanessa being upset about having her event publicly criticized. Then came the dress shopping incident. Lorraine vetoed 4 dresses before they even made it to the fitting room. Too plain, too flashy, wrong neckline, wrong silhouette. When Presley finally found one she genuinely loved, a simple A-line that actually made her smile, Lorraine looked at it like someone had asked her to admire a gas station sandwich. "It's fine." 2 words. That's all she gave her daughter on what should have been a special moment. Presley bought it anyway, but she was quiet for 3 days afterward. Every small victory came with a price. Then there was the dinner with my parents. My folks drove in from 2 states over. First time meeting Lorraine. Made reservations at a nice place. Neutral territory. I briefed my parents on keeping things light. Told them Lorraine could be intense but meant well. I was completely delusional. Lorraine spent the entire meal interrogating my mother about our family's financial history. Asked pointed questions about my father's retirement investments, whether they owned their home outright, what kind of neighborhood they lived in. My mom tried to change the subject twice. Asked about the restaurant's history. Complimented the bread. Lorraine steamrolled right through both attempts like they were speed bumps. My dad, who built his welding business from nothing and still has the calluses to prove it, sat there eating his pasta with the look of a man actively choosing not to flip a table. Then, when my mom mentioned she was proud of me for buying my condo young, Lorraine smiled with all the warmth of a February wind. Well, Gavin owned 2 properties by that age, commercial and residential, but I'm sure your son is doing his best with what he has. The silence at that table could have been bottled and sold as awkwardness concentrate. In the parking lot afterward, my mom pulled me aside. "Honey, are you sure about this?" I told her Presley was worth it, that Lorraine was temporary. My mom nodded, didn't argue, but I could tell she didn't believe a word of it. My dad's take was more direct. "Watch yourself with that one." Didn't specify which one. Didn't need to. By month 4, we were fighting more than we were getting along. Greatest hits from Lorraine included the time she asked if my college even had real accreditation, the time she wondered aloud if my condo had enough room for children or if we'd have to raise them in a closet, and the time she introduced me to her book club friends as Presley's current situation. One night after a brutal dinner where Lorraine spent 45 minutes discussing Gavin's recent promotion like he was still part of the family. I tried to have a real conversation about it. I told Presley I needed her to pick a side, not in some dramatic ultimatum way, not asking her to cut her mother off, just an acknowledgement that what her mother was doing was wrong, that she saw it, that she was on my team when it mattered. She sat on the edge of our bed and looked at me like I'd asked her to solve differential equations in her head. "You don't get it. My relationship with my mom is complicated. It's always been complicated. I can't just flip a switch and change everything." Okay, so when then? I asked. "How long before she stops comparing me to your ex? When do I get to be treated like an actual person instead of some disappointment she's putting up with?" She never had an answer. That was the problem. Presley turned 29 in early May. Lorraine insisted on throwing her a party at the house. Translation: she wanted complete control over every detail, every guest, every moment of her daughter's special day. The morning of the party, I had a bad feeling. Nothing I could point to specifically. Just this gut sense that something was about to go sideways. I mentioned it to Theo when he called to confirm he was still driving down. "You're being paranoid," he said. After 6 months with Lorraine, paranoid is just another word for prepared. I'd spent 2 weeks tracking down Presley's gift. She'd mentioned wanting this specific vintage record player she'd seen online months ago. Limited edition, fully restored, beautiful walnut finish with original brass hardware from the 1960s. The kind of thing you don't just find on Amazon. The kind of thing that requires actual effort to track down. Found one through a collector in Portland. Paid more than I probably should have. Had it shipped with insurance that cost almost as much as the shipping itself. Spent a whole Saturday testing every function to make sure it worked perfectly. Even tracked down a first pressing of her favorite album to go with it. The party started fine. Normal enough. Lorraine's friends making small talk about their renovations and vacations. Their kids' college applications. Their upcoming trips to places I'd never been. Standard suburban crowd. I stayed near the food table and tried to blend in. One of Lorraine's friends asked what I did for a living. Pleasant enough woman. Genuine smile. When I said civil engineer, she nodded with what seemed like real interest. Started asking about bridge design. Then Lorraine jumped in from across the room. He designs roads mostly. Very salt-of-the-earth work. Like I was a medieval peasant who happened to own a computer. The woman's smile flickered. She excused herself shortly after. The look on Presley's face when she opened my gift was exactly what I'd hoped for. Eyes going wide, real smile, that little gasp she does when something catches her off guard. Oh my God, this is perfect. I can't believe you actually remembered. For about 30 seconds, everything felt right. This was why I was doing all of it. These moments, this person, this future we were building together. Then Lorraine walked over. She looked at the record player, looked at me. That's interesting. Very kitsch. She said kitsch the way most people say cockroach. Gavin always gave her jewelry, though, something she could actually wear outside the house. I kept my voice level. Good thing I'm not Gavin. Lorraine's smile didn't reach her eyes. Obviously not. I was still processing that when I noticed someone across the room who absolutely should not have been there. Tall guy, dark hair, expensive polo shirt, standing by the refreshments table like he owned the place. Presley saw him at the same moment. Her face went through confusion, recognition, and panic in about 2 seconds flat. That was Gavin, the legendary Gavin, standing in the living room at my fiancé's birthday party. I looked at Lorraine. She was watching us with barely hidden satisfaction. Oh, didn't I mention? I ran into Gavin at the country club last week. Thought it would be lovely for them to catch up. There it was. She'd invited my fiancé's ex-boyfriend without telling either of us. On purpose. Theo materialized next to me holding a plate of appetizers. Dude, tell me that's not who I think it is. It is. On a scale of 1 to signing her up for 200 timeshare brochures, where are we at? I'm thinking Scientology mailing lists. I made it through the rest of the party. Barely. Smiled when I was supposed to smile. Made small talk with people I didn't know. Pretended not to notice Lorraine steering Gavin toward Presley every chance she got. At one point, she literally took Presley's arm and walked her over to where Gavin was standing by the fireplace. Left me holding 2 drinks nobody wanted. One of Lorraine's friends actually gave me a pitying look. Oh, Gavin, you simply have to tell Presley about your promotion. Gavin, didn't you two used to love that restaurant downtown? Gavin, remember that weekend you surprised her in Vermont? The worst part wasn't Gavin himself. The guy seemed uncomfortable half the time. The worst part was watching Presley smile and nod and play along while her mother ran the whole show. Not once did she pull away. After the last guest left, and it was just me, Presley, and Lorraine in the living room, surrounded by wrapping paper and dirty dishes, I said what I'd been holding back for 6 months. Lorraine was loading plates into the dishwasher like I wasn't even there. Like I was furniture that had overstayed its welcome. You invited him on purpose. She didn't look up. I don't know what you mean. You knew exactly what you were doing. You've known what you were doing since the day I proposed. She finally turned around. Her smile could cut glass. Embarrass you? Honey, I don't need to embarrass you. You do that just fine on your own. Presley stepped between us, looking panicked. Can we please not do this right now? It's my birthday. I turned to her. Your mother invited your ex-boyfriend to your birthday party. Without telling you. Without telling me. She spent the whole night pushing you two together. Does that seem normal to you? She didn't answer. Just stood there, wringing her hands. Lorraine jumped in. Gavin is an old family friend. He was practically part of this family for 3 years. Unlike some people, he knows how to conduct himself. You've been comparing me to him since the day I proposed. Nothing I do is good enough. Tonight you looked at my gift and called it kitsch. Lorraine dropped all pretense. Because it's true. Presley deserves better than average. Someone with real ambition. Someone who can give her the life she was meant to have. I turned to Presley, my fiancé. The woman I defended to my own family. The woman I'd spent 6 months absorbing insults for. Are you gonna say anything? She looked at me. Looked at her mother. Back at me. I could see her weighing options. Figuring out which relationship mattered more right now. And instead of defending me, instead of finally saying something after 6 months of silence, she said the words that ended us. She's got a point, okay? Maybe if you actually tried harder, she wouldn't think you're so pathetic. Maybe if you did something impressive for once, she'd have something nice to say. The room went dead silent. Even Lorraine looked slightly surprised. Like she'd been hoping to win but hadn't expected a total knockout. Pathetic. 6 months of trying. 6 months of patience. 6 months of smiling through insults and telling myself it would get better. All of that gone because of a single word from the person who was supposed to have my back. I nodded. Felt something cold settle in my chest. Cool. Good to know where I stand. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the wedding band I'd been carrying for weeks. Custom made. Her grandmother's birthstone set into the band because Presley had mentioned once, early in our relationship, that she wished she had something to remember her by after she passed. 2 months of savings, hours of research finding the right jeweler, weeks of anticipation waiting for the perfect moment to show her. I set the ring on the coffee table, right next to a coaster Lorraine had complained about the last time I visited. Here, for all the stuff you won't have to settle for anymore. Then I walked out without looking back. Didn't slam the door, didn't yell, didn't give Lorraine the satisfaction of a scene she could twist into a story about my temper later. Just a clean exit. Got in my truck and drove home through empty streets. Didn't remember a single turn I made. Just autopilot and silence and that weird calm that comes after something breaks. Theo called around midnight. What do you need? Right now, nothing. But check in tomorrow. I might need help moving her stuff out. Presley texted the next morning. Said she was sorry. Said she didn't mean it. Said her mother pushed her too far and she snapped. Said she loved me and we could work through this together if I just gave her another chance. Classic morning after regret from someone who finally showed their true colors and didn't like what they saw. I didn't respond because there was genuinely nothing left to say. She called. Voicemail. She showed up at my condo that afternoon. Knocked for 15 minutes straight. I sat on my couch 12 feet away and didn't answer. Just listened to her knock, then beg, then finally give up. Watched through the peephole as she walked away, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Shoulders hunched, head down. Then went back to packing her stuff into boxes. Theo came over that evening to help. The apartment was mine. Lease in my name. All my furniture. But Presley had things everywhere after almost a year together. Her shampoo in the shower. Her toothbrush in the holder. Her coffee mug still in the sink from 2 mornings ago, when everything had been normal. We boxed it all up. No cutting up clothes or throwing things away. No dramatic gestures that would feel good for 5 minutes and stupid forever after. I just wanted her gone from my space. We're really not going to do anything? Theo taped a box shut. That woman made your life miserable for 6 months. And Presley just sat there and let it happen. What do you want me to do? Egg her house? I have a spreadsheet of ideas. It's pretty comprehensive. Alphabetized and everything. Cross-referenced by cost, legal risk, and satisfaction level. I almost smiled. File that away. We might need it later. 4 days after the breakup, something unexpected happened. I got a LinkedIn message. From Gavin. I stared at the notification for a solid minute before opening it. What could Presley's legendary ex possibly have to say that I wanted to hear? The guy who'd been held up as my replacement all evening. The ghost I'd been losing to for 6 months. But curiosity is powerful. The message said, "Hey, I know this is weird, but I think we should talk. What happened at that party wasn't what you think. There's something you need to know. Coffee? My treat." I read it 3 times. Looked for the catch. The trap. Then I said yes. We met at a coffee shop across town. Gavin showed up looking uncomfortable, which made 2 of us. He didn't waste time. Lorraine hit me up about 3 weeks before that party. Said Presley wanted to reconnect. Made it sound like you two were having problems and Presley was having second thoughts about the engagement. I leaned back. Lorraine told you Presley wanted you there? I hadn't talked to Presley in over 2 years. We ended things and moved on. But Lorraine made it seem like she was reaching out on her daughter's behalf. Said Presley was too embarrassed to contact me herself. Why would you believe that? Gavin looked down at his coffee. Turned the cup in his hands. Because Lorraine pulled the exact same thing when I was dating Presley. That's why we actually broke up. Not because we wanted different things. Not because we grew apart. Because Lorraine made it impossible to stay. She compared me to some ex before me. A guy named Warren who apparently owned 3 businesses by 25 and walked on water in his spare time. I laughed. Nothing funny about it. Sounds familiar. He told me everything. How Lorraine had sabotaged his entire 3-year relationship. How she'd manufactured problems out of nothing. How she'd turned every holiday, every dinner, every family gathering into an opportunity to remind him he wasn't good enough. She'd call Presley after every visit and spend an hour pointing out everything I'd done wrong, Gavin said. The way I sat, the way I talked, whether I'd complimented the right things in the house, whether I'd brought the right gift. It was like she was keeping a scorecard nobody else could see. And somehow I was always losing. Same playbook. Then he told me the part that made my blood run cold. Lorraine had contacted his employer 2 months ago. Anonymous complaint about his job performance. Claimed he'd been unprofessional with clients. Made allegations about his conduct that were completely made up. He'd only found out because his manager thought the whole thing smelled wrong and did some digging into where the complaint came from. She tried to mess with your job? She tried to mess with both of us. He looked me straight in the eye. Steady. Serious. I did some checking after I figured out what she was doing. Made some calls to people I know. She's been sending stuff to your company too. Anonymous complaints claiming you're unprofessional, that you missed deadlines, had conflicts with your team, that you were unreliable. The room tilted. What? Nothing stuck because you've got a solid reputation, and your boss apparently didn't buy any of it. But she tried. Multiple times. Different email addresses. Different angles. I sat there processing. Lorraine hadn't just been making snide comments at dinner parties. She hadn't just been comparing me unfavorably to past boyfriends. She'd been actively working to destroy my career, to make me unemployable, to get rid of me through financial ruin if the emotional stuff didn't work fast enough. Every smile she'd given me at those dinners, every time she'd said welcome to the family, every moment I'd tried to be patient and understanding and give her the benefit of the doubt, all of it happening while she was sending emails designed to get me fired. Why? What does she even get out of this? Gavin shrugged. Control. Presley's her only daughter. Maybe she can't stand sharing her. Maybe she needs Presley dependent and single so she has someone to manage. I stopped trying to figure out what's wrong with her years ago. I just know how she operates. And she's been doing this for a long time. He paused. There's one more thing. And I went back and forth on whether to even tell you this. I waited. After Lorraine reached out to me about the party, I got curious. Did some digging through old messages, old texts I'd never deleted. Turns out Presley had been texting me during your relationship. Nothing romantic, but she'd vent about you, about how her mother didn't approve, about how she wasn't sure you were the right fit, about how maybe she'd made a mistake saying yes. Silence. She never told you she was in contact with me, did she? No, she hadn't. Not once. Not even a hint. I didn't respond to most of them, Gavin said. I'd moved on, had my own life, but she kept reaching out every few months, usually after fights with her mom, usually when she was feeling guilty about not defending you. She'd send these messages about how hard everything was, how she felt stuck. He stood to leave, paused at the edge of the table. For what it's worth, I'm sorry you went through this. And I'm engaged now, to someone whose mother is actually a normal human being. So the birthday party thing was completely out of line. I never wanted to be there. I thought I was helping. I watched him walk out, sat there for another 20 minutes, coffee going cold, brain running through every moment of the past year with new information. Presley had been texting her ex the entire time, venting about me, questioning our engagement, running to him whenever things got hard, while I was bending over backward trying to make it work. Then I called Theo. Remember when you said you wanted to do something with style? I've got an idea. The first thing I did was call a lawyer. Theo thought I was being overly cautious, said we should just post everything on social media and let the internet handle it. But I'd spent enough years in engineering to know that documentation matters. You do it right, with evidence and paper trails, or you don't do it at all. The attorney's name was Maggie, mid-50s, specialized in employment and civil litigation, the kind of lawyer who'd clearly seen enough human behavior over the years to stop being surprised by any of it. I laid everything out. The 6 months of harassment, the birthday party ambush, Gavin's information about the employer complaints, the email trails he'd provided. She listened without interrupting, took notes, asked sharp questions at exactly the right moments. Then she looked at the documentation and said the words I needed to hear. You have a case. She explained tortious interference with business relationships. Defamation per se, since Lorraine's claims about my professional conduct were provably false and had been made to my employer specifically to cause harm. The email trail was solid. The timestamps showed a clear pattern. Maggie said going to court was one option. Expensive and slow, but potentially satisfying. The other option was a formal cease and desist demanding she stop immediately, plus notice that all evidence had been preserved. I chose the letter, but I asked her to help with something else too. Lorraine had built her entire social identity around a local women's professional network. I'd learned this from Cole, Presley's brother. He'd reached out after hearing about the breakup, wanting to apologize for his mother's behavior. Said he'd seen it happen before and always felt guilty for not speaking up. We'd talked for about an hour. 8 years on their advisory board, he told me. Charity events, fundraising galas, speeches about mentorship and ethical leadership and supporting other women's careers. Her reputation in that community was everything to her, the thing she protected above all else. Cole's exact words. She cares more about how she looks than anything real. Her image is her whole identity. Take that away and there's nothing left. The network had an annual charity gala coming up in about 10 days. Big event. Local business leaders. Community recognition awards. Press coverage. Lorraine was scheduled to give the keynote speech about supporting other women's professional development. The irony was almost too perfect. I asked Maggie if we could send a copy of the cease and desist, along with all the documentation, to the board as well. Not as a formal legal complaint, just a heads up that someone scheduled to speak about professional integrity had been sabotaging other people's employment through fake complaints. Let them make their own decision with the facts in front of them. Maggie raised an eyebrow. Are you sure about this? Once it's sent, there's no taking it back. If she's giving speeches about ethics while doing this behind the scenes, those people deserve to know. She nodded. We can do that. What she did was calculated and ongoing. Most people don't have the documentation you have. Use it. The package went out Thursday. Certified mail to Lorraine with return receipt requested. A separate packet to the board, marked for their ethics committee. Gavin had provided copies of the emails with routing information. Records of when Lorraine contacted him pretending to speak for Presley. Screenshots with timestamps. I added my own documentation. HR confirmation that anonymous complaints had been received and dismissed, with dates matching Lorraine's pattern. Everything professional. Then I waited. The cease and desist arrived at Lorraine's house Monday. The board received their packet the same day. By Wednesday, Maggie called to tell me the ethics committee had contacted her office asking for more details. They were taking it seriously. Emergency meeting scheduled for Saturday morning. The gala happened Saturday evening. I wasn't there, but Theo's college roommate worked for the event planning company. He sent updates throughout the night. Lorraine arrived in a gown, worked the room like she owned it, accepted compliments on her upcoming speech, made the rounds shaking hands, air-kissing cheeks, the performance of a lifetime. Then a board member approached her. Quiet conversation in the corner. Lorraine's smile freezing. More board members joining. The conversation getting less quiet. Heads started turning. That buzz you get when something's about to go wrong in public. She was asked to step away from the podium before her speech began. Serious concerns about conduct unbecoming of a leadership position. She tried to give the speech anyway. Started walking toward the microphone like nothing had happened. Security walked her to the exit. The fallout was immediate. Word travels fast in those communities. By Sunday morning, Lorraine's name was being discussed in group chats she wasn't part of. By Monday, 3 of her regular lunch friends had suddenly become very busy for the foreseeable future. Maggie forwarded me a response from Lorraine's attorney Monday afternoon. Formal apology letter acknowledging the inappropriate communications and promising to cease all such conduct immediately. No admission of guilt, because lawyers never allow that, but acknowledgement nonetheless. 3 pages of legal speak that basically translated to, my client got caught and would very much like to not get sued. My company received a similar letter. HR showed it to me with raised eyebrows and obvious curiosity about what exactly had happened. My boss asked if I wanted to pursue further action. I said no. The apology was enough. The truth being on record was enough. Cole called me later that week. Said his mother had been officially removed from the board. 8 years of reputation. Gone in a single evening. Her lunch friends had scattered like roaches when the lights came on. What did you tell her when she called crying about it? That she should have thought about consequences before she tried to destroy people's lives. First time I've ever stood up to her. He paused. She did the same thing to my wife, you know. Anonymous complaints to her graduate program, claiming she cheated on exams. That's why we moved across the country. I didn't know that. Nobody did. You're the first person who actually did something about it. All those months thinking I was the problem. Turned out I was just the latest in a long line. The first one who refused to disappear quietly. 3 months passed. Life started looking like something worth living again. I threw myself into work and got assigned as lead engineer on a major bridge rehabilitation project. Complex, multi-year job requiring total focus. The kind of work where people's lives depend on your calculations being right. Doesn't leave room for dwelling on the past. My boss pulled me aside after the assignment was announced. Said he'd heard about the Lorraine situation through the HR grapevine. Said the anonymous complaints she'd sent had been so obviously fake, so clearly written by someone who had no idea how engineering worked, that they'd actually made him trust me more. Sometimes the universe throws you a small win. The first few weeks were still rough. I'd catch myself checking my phone for texts that weren't coming, reaching for someone who wasn't there anymore. Once I almost called her to share something funny that happened at work before I remembered we weren't doing that anymore. But gradually, day by day, it got easier. Spent weekends actually enjoying being alone instead of dreading the next performance at Lorraine's house. Theo and I started watching the worst-rated movies we could find and competing to predict the plot twists. I was winning. He claimed his losses were strategic, part of some larger plan he refused to explain. Adopted a dog from the shelter because my condo was too quiet. Scruffy mutt with one ear that didn't quite stand upright and way too much energy for a one-bedroom apartment. Named him Bridges because I'm exactly that corny. Also because he kept trying to walk across the back of the couch like it was a structural beam he was inspecting. Funny thing about getting out of a toxic situation. You don't realize how bad it was until you're out of it. I started sleeping better, eating actual meals instead of whatever required the least effort. My shoulders weren't constantly tensed, waiting for the next criticism. The Presley situation faded to background noise. She stopped calling after the first few weeks. Heard through Cole she'd moved back in with Lorraine while she figured things out, which told me everything about where her priorities were. Some people never break the cycle. Some people don't want to. Then, on a random Thursday evening in August, there was a knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. Theo was out of town for work. Pizza wasn't due for another 20 minutes. Bridges lifted his head from his bed and gave me a look that said he wasn't sure about any of this. Checked the peephole. Presley. She looked different. Exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes, like she hadn't slept well in weeks. She was holding herself like someone who'd been through something hard and hadn't bounced back. The confident woman I'd proposed to on that random Tuesday morning was gone. I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. Stood in the frame with one hand on the doorknob. Bridges sat behind me. She started talking immediately. Words tumbling out like she'd rehearsed this speech 100 times on the drive over. I cut my mom off. Completely. After what she did, after what came out, I couldn't defend her anymore. Cole told me everything. The emails. The complaints to your job. I had no idea she was doing any of that. I swear. I leaned against the doorframe. Didn't say anything. She ruined everything. All those years, all those relationships, and I never saw it. I thought she was just being protective. I didn't know she was actively trying to destroy people. Still nothing from me. I know I messed up. I know what I said was awful. I've thought about it every single day since. Please, can we start over? Without her in the picture? Her eyes were wet. Real tears. She believed what she was saying. Really thought this could work. I let the silence sit between us for a long moment. You called me pathetic. I know. In front of her. After 6 months of me taking every insult she threw. And the one time you opened your mouth to say something, it was to agree with her. I was scared. She was my mother. I didn't know how to... That's not my problem anymore. I straightened up from the doorframe. You cut her off now because she got publicly humiliated and the truth came out. But I showed you who she was for 6 months. I asked you to set boundaries. I asked you to stand up for me even once. And you chose her. Every single time. That's not fair. Also, I kept my voice level. Calm. Gavin told me about the texts. Her face went white. You were messaging your ex the entire time we were together, while I was bending over backward trying to make this work. That wasn't... I was just confused. I didn't know what to... You want to know what's not fair? Finding out my fiancé was running to her ex behind my back while I was getting destroyed by her mother in public. That's not fair. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. We're done. Don't come back here. I started to close the door. Wait. Her voice cracked. So that's it? Everything we had and you can just walk away like it meant nothing? I paused. The record player's in a box by the dumpster if you want it. You're really gonna be like this? Like what? Like somebody who knows his worth? I shrugged. Yeah. Turns out I am. Closed the door. Stood there for a second, listening to her cry on the other side. Then footsteps down the hallway. Lorraine lost her position, her reputation, and her relationship with both her kids. Cole hadn't spoken to her in months. Presley finally saw the pattern, but only after it cost her everything she thought she wanted. Me? For the first time in over a year, I don't have to prove myself to someone who was never going to accept the proof anyway. That's everything.